it should be numeric, but they become strings, or the other way around. So in that case, you have to be able to convert those different types of variables to the correct one. Here I'm gonna just tell you how to convert between categorical and numeric. So again, we are going to use a data set. This data set is called TIPS. So again, you want to make sure you have the TIPS data set on your desktop. Yeah, the data set name is TIPS. Okay, so again, the first two steps, same. Because we've done them, so you don't need to repeat them. So the third step, again, you just use the same way to import data. And in this case, we want to import the data set TIPS, right? And then we want to save the data frame, save the data table into the data frame called TIPS. Okay, so once you've done that, then okay, let me also do that, and then let's see what's going on inside that. Okay, again, if you want to see the full content of the data set, you can say TIPS, right? And then you can look at what's going on inside the data set. You can see there are 244 rows. Okay, then what we are going to do is to create another data frame. It's called tips.sex. And then in this case, we wanna use the original tips data set, and we wanna do sex. Sex is actually one of the one of the variables inside the data set. Okay, so in other words, here you are saying, I want to use the tips data set, right? And I want which column? Sex column. If you look at the tips data set, there's a column called sex. And we want to use as type function to do this task. And we are going to have a category. Okay, so now, so far it's very abstract, so let's execute the code and see what you can get. Okay, and then next, you see tips smoker. And again, smoker is actually another column name, right? Another variable. So again, let's do that. Okay, and let's keep going and see the results, and you'll know what we just did. So, and then you say, I want to print out the tips, but this time we are learning a new function. It's called info function. The info function, unlike shape only gives you the number of rows and columns, right? And then head gives you the first 5 observations. But the info function gives all this information. So what kind of information? It tells you basically how many observations inside the data set, 244, right? And then how many columns inside the data set. And in addition to that, it actually lists all the variables inside the data frame, right? So we have total field, have tip, have sex, have smoker, and it tells you how many cases or observations for each variables. And then also the data type. Float. Remember what is float?
Decimal number.
Yeah, those numbers with decimal places, basically. So, okay, notice that sex and smoker now they are category. And where did you see that?
6.
Where did you see category? Inside the code, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, what we just did, in these two steps, we basically tell Python that, okay, for these two variables, sex and the smoker, I want to define their data types as category. Does that make sense? So in other words, you can actually change the definition for types of variables by yourself. Sometimes that could be important because if the program treats those two variables as wrong type, for example, if some variables they are not numerical, but if the program just treat them inappropriately, then you could do calculation for them, but it doesn't make sense. For example, if I say I get your information for your student ID and I calculate the average of your student ID, that would be nonsense. So that's not a good idea. So sometimes we do need to redefine the variables. Okay, that's run one. Hold on, we're okay. Okay, let's finish this, and I think we can get about 5 to 10 minutes break, and then we'll come back after we finish this one. So I think we can get stretch a little bit. But anyway, let's finish this one. So number 7, convert data. So in the previous handout, we talked about how to convert precisely define a variable as a category or categorical variable. But in this case, we want to define or convert variables to numeric data. In this case, the data set we want to use, again, it is actually the same data set. So in this case, we can skip the first 3 steps, right? Because we've done them. So we can start from here, the convert total bill to a numeric data type. So let's just execute the code here. So let's keep adding and okay, so the code here, you see here again we are trying to create a new new Python object, and again we are using the tips dataset, right? And then here we specifically define we want to deal with the total bill column. If you look at the original data set for tips, there's a column called total bill, right? And then notice that here the function we are using is pd.toNumeric. ToNumeric, of course, is to convert that variable to be a numeric variable. Okay, so again, here we need to define again which variable you want to do the conversion. So we want to use the tips data set. And which variable you want to do the conversion? Total bill. Okay, and then you see arrows at the end, right? And it say coerce. And we do the same for the next thing. Okay, that will come back to that the arrows, parameter, but let's keep going for the next one. So the next one, we also want to do the same thing for the tip column or variable. So again, we use the same function, right, ToNumeric, and then again we have the same kind of structure. tips. In this case, we are dealing with the tip column inside the tips data set. And then again, we have this parameter. Okay. And once you execute those, then you can again print out the information for the data set. And this time, actually you don't, I think in the previous case, hold on, where's the previous case? I think from the previous handout. Okay, so here basically what we are doing is as I said, we actually use the arrows kind of input to control the content, but what we are controlling for. Because when you look at the output, these two actually they are exactly the same as the previous case, right?
Yeah.
So I put a note here. So we were dealing with the total bill and tips columns, right? Those two variables are what we just deal with. But it has to you have to open up the data set because previously, these two variables, their data types, the string missing is used in these columns to encode missing values. In other words, if you open up the data set before you execute the convert to numeric, you'll see those missing values. They are represented by missing. That's how you actually code those missing values. But after you've done this, then basically they have different representation. So let's look at hold on, where's the tips and here it doesn't show the full content. Let me see. Where's that data set?
What do you mean by missing values?
For example, sometimes there are some data points they are missing.
Oh, there's no one in it.
Yeah, you're right. In this case, actually they are.
There is no missing value.
Yeah, this one I think.
Okay,
Yeah, I have. Yeah, to be honest, I think this one I have to check again because I remember they were missing values, but it doesn't look like that's the case. But these the convert to numeric. This one, yeah, this one were the main purpose is to basically as we. It actually has to do with data conversion because sorry, not data. Yeah, it's data conversion, but it's about how you actually represent or deal with those missing values. Mm-hmm. But apparently that data set, as we just saw, it doesn't actually contain missing values. So I think this one I have to go back and figure out what's going on with that data set. But yeah, but this one I think is not really clear. But for data analysis, sometimes you have to deal with missing data first. Like I think in R we did not really talk too much about how to deal with missing values, but when I was teaching SAS, actually that matters a lot because if you have missing values, sometimes the program just you just cannot run the program. Here I think, Yeah, this one I really have to figure out, what's going on with the data set. But basically the main purpose of these two exercises are, is to let you know that, sometimes you have to actually make sure you have the correct data types before you can run any analysis. I remember when I was teaching SAS, for IPEN, sometimes some students, they say, oh, they can, the code actually is correct, but they cannot get any results. That's because, for example, sometimes we are trying to calculate some statistics for some variables. Those variables, they are supposed to be numeric, but once we finish the importing process, they became string. So that's why they cannot do any calculations. So that's why sometimes we do need to do the conversion. But the number 7, numerical, I think this one, please ignore this one because this one I think I have to figure out what the problem is because it doesn't look like it makes sense. But the previous one is okay because you learn how to or define those variables with the right type. But the numerical one I have to double check. But anyway, let's have maybe just 5 minutes break and then